Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final day of the Fox 32 NFL Combine Special, Scouting the Future. My name is Luke Canellis. 329 players invited, top prospects there. Some not working out, but all meeting with teams and talking to reporters over the last couple of days, and it will continue through the weekend. Let's go live to Indianapolis, bring in our own reporter who's done a great job all week long. There she is, Cassie Carlson. And Cassie, last night, I need to get into the story right away because I woke up at 6:30 this morning, threw on Sports Talk, and all of a sudden I'm hearing all these stories about Abdul Carter. Last night, tests revealed that Penn State pass rusher Abdul Carter, potential first overall pick in the draft, had a stress reaction in his right foot. After undergoing further scans on his foot, we are told that doctors advised Carter not to have foot surgery. So what are you hearing right now at the Combine?
Yeah, he's not going to have foot surgery, and then he will be ready to go for his pro day at Penn State, which is going to be in about a month at the end of March. So I think that's a positive sign for Abdul Carter. And I just talked to PFF's lead draft analyst, Trevor Sikkema, who said he doesn't think it's going to affect his draft stock whatsoever. This guy is the #1 prospect on many people's boards for the right reasons. He's just scratching the surface of his potential and what he can be. And we all saw him dominate with one arm in the playoffs. So imagine what he can do with one foot, too. I think that Abdul Carter is still a favorite to go very high in this draft. So I don't think it's really that much of a concern, although I know we were going back and forth about what we thought might happen. I said, hey, if he drops to 10, he could be a Chicago Bear. And you said, no, you don't want him if he had a foot problem.
Well, you know, Carter's agent, Drew Rosenhaus, as you just said, Rosenhaus said the stress reaction is a non-factor in Carter's draft stock. And you just told me about what you heard from one of the draft experts saying that he didn't believe it was either. And I was going to throw it in your lap and open it up here on the show before we talked about the back and forth that you and I had on text. Yeah, I don't think that Carter with a stress fracture, I'm not sure I'm using the #1 pick and Abdul Carter if he has a stress fracture and doesn't go through the surgery, or at least I don't feel 100% that his health is fine and there will be no issues. You feel differently?
Yeah, I think so, because I don't know that would be a long-term injury or issue. So I don't know. I feel like that's something that's not super concerning, especially when you're looking at the upside of what he can turn into. And I referred to Jalen Carter, who obviously the Bears did not draft, and they had that trade with the Eagles, who went up and took him. And then you see him go off and be the most dominant interior defensive lineman in a short period of time and go on and win a Super Bowl. And how would you feel if the Bears had the opportunity to take Abdul Carter and then pass on him and then go see him?
And I respect what you're saying, but I want you to separate the two. I know, but I want you to separate the two because there are a number of people that feel like you do. Wow, we blew it on Jalen Carter. We can't make that mistake again. And instead, the way I look at it is, yeah, we blew it. Just like if I buy a bad stock, I blew it and I lost a lot of money. That doesn't mean I want to go out and buy another bad stock because I felt like I blew it on the first one. That's just how I feel. You and I, different.
I don't think it's a bad stock, though. I think there's a lot of upside.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you this then. I want to keep it right here because we had the start of workouts for defensive linemen and linebackers today. Who are you most looking forward to seeing work out?
Yeah, I think you hinted at it at the top of the show that it's just a different era at the NFL Combine right now, and a lot of these top guys are going to forego going through the workouts here in Indy, and they're going to do them at their pro days at their respected school. So it's a little bit of a different feel, I would say. And also a note on Carter, because remember last year when we were talking about Caleb Williams not going through the medicals and someone was criticizing them? Well, isn't that kind of like a similar situation? He would have been protecting himself if he didn't go through that, and this would not be a topic of conversation today. So I think that's an interesting note, too. Shamar Stewart, an edge rusher out of Texas A&M, is interesting. I think he measured in at 6'5", 267 pounds, and the reason that's notable is because it's down about 15 pounds from when he was at the Senior Bowl. So people are expecting him to have a very good 40 time, which I think could help him shoot up some draft boards. Some other guys, I think Myles Williams is an edge rusher out of Georgia, someone that said he met with the Chicago Bears. He's going to go through some of the measurables as well. Those are the two that I think are interesting. But when you're looking at a Mason Graham, Jalen Walker, Walker, some other guys. I just think you're going to have to wait till their pro day. It's not quite the same feel as it has been in years past when it comes to these guys and working out here at the Combine, especially for this position group.
What you and I can't agree on is the Bears do need another pass rusher opposite Montez Sweat. Whether that guy comes through the draft, you and I and Big Anthony Herron talked about it yesterday, and I referenced the fact that the Bears haven't drafted a pass rusher who's given them significant numbers in over 20 years. So I'm hoping it happens this season. You also had the chance to sit down with several people the past few days. Great interviews. Thanks very much, including the NFL Network's Stacey Dales, who was there. What did she have to say about the Bears?
Well, she's so interesting to talk to because she goes and does the on-field workout broadcasts for the next 4 days. So she knows everything about all these draft prospects, little stories about how they grew up, things they have gone through throughout college, how they're preparing for this process. And she's also someone who's based in Chicago, is up at Hallis Hall a lot, and is very excited for the future with Ben Johnson, who she believes will be a good head coach. So had a great conversation of what she thinks is in store for the Bears this offseason. How much say do you think Ben Johnson will have in personnel?
This is such a good question.
No one knows.
It's such a good question. I really do think that Ben Johnson, part of him becoming the head coach of the Chicago Bear was him saying, I'm going to do this, and this is just my interpretation. I'm going to do this, but I need to make sure that I have a say in the types of personnel that we have, types of locker room players that we have, what I want to do from a skill set offensively, and then he's going to hand those keys over to Dennis Allen on the defensive side, which is why you go out and get a guy who has head coaching experience and who's had incredible success, Dennis Allen, as a defensive coordinator in the National Football League. I really like the staff that they've assembled. They've kept a few of the past regime, which they play some defense now, and I really feel like Ben Johnson's going to have a say in maybe not, I want that guy, but maybe that's the type of player that I need.
One of the things that I thought Poles hinted at when he talked today was that you need good interior defensive pressure in order for your edge rushers to have success. And that's the only thing that I think he kind of gave us, which I'm like, all right, so how do we read into that? How do you read into that?
Well, I mentioned Mason Graham.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
if you want a defensive tackle, this crop is so good. You're talking about a guy that can win. And remember where Ryan Poles came from, right? Chris Jones is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Unfortunately for the Chiefs, he was banged up for the latter part of their season, but he was still one of the best at his craft coming off the interior, and they moved him around. They've always moved him around. That's what you can do with the best defensive tackles, and that's what you're going to see with really, there's 5 in this group, in this prospect group, that can be moved around in a capacity where you affect the quarterback. And I'm betting Montez Sweat is sitting somewhere saying, go get me a dog in the middle.
Yep. Yeah, we saw Montez Sweat get chipped a lot, and I know he wasn't fully healthy this season, but you know that he wants someone else on the opposite end. Of course, they had cut DeMarcus Walker, so that he no longer has him, who's going to supplement in that position as well. And I thought Stacey Dales mentioned the impact that Dennis Allen is going to have on this defense, and also in helping Ben Johnson make some decisions on defensive personnel and the direction they want to go in that. So I think he's going to lean on him heavily when it comes to that. But he also was asked about pass rushers affecting the quarterback, and he put a strong emphasis on rushing coverage working together and winning those lockdown corners too. So I just think it's all encompassing. But the one thing that sticks out most is just the physicality. That's been kind of a key word that they've floated around a lot, is they would just want to be a physical football team, finish around the ball. And I can't say, I mean, that kind of refers to the offensive line in a lot of ways, that it hasn't necessarily been the case under Ryan Poles.
Don't forget as well, listen, they get Andrew Billings back, hopefully a healthy Big Bill, and Gervon Dexter going into a third season. At some point, you need to see numbers like we saw from Dexter at the beginning of last season. All right, Bears don't have the first overall pick like they did the last 2 years, Cassie. Man, they've been flying under the radar when you compare what happened with the Bears at the Combine the last couple of years. Nothing like last season when Ryan Poles all but admitted he was going to select Caleb Williams and trade Justin Fields. And then in 23, man, the guy held an auction at the Combine before trading the #1 overall pick the following week to Carolina. And I saw Ben Johnson on Tuesday talking to just about everyone and anyone who would have him on their show, radio, TV. Give me an idea of what other reporters are saying. We just heard from Stacey Dales, but give me an idea. I know if you had a chance to chat with a lot of reporters out there, national people as well. Tell me what they're saying about the 2025 Bears.
So I thought an interesting thing with Trevor Sikkema, who I talked to, and he's a draft guy, so he knows everything about all these prospects, is that, and we've had this conversation on Chicago Sports Tonight, what's the Bears' window? And they believe that they are in win-now mode because that window starts when Caleb Williams is still on that rookie contract. And a lot of people have considered Ben Johnson to be the belle of the ball here because he is very engaging when he talks to the media. And I think that's a key point. That's a big difference from what we were experiencing with the last regime. Like, he kind of gives you some information. We heard him talk about Caleb Williams texting him during the Super Bowl because he was so excited to work with him and wanting to take that next step and wanting to be a winning franchise. So it's a different feel around the Bears and the excitement. I think we have more maybe tempered expectations. We can all, drink the Kool-Aid. We kind of get into that a little bit when it comes to training camp because you're so excited. It's the only team you're around. But I do feel like there's a sense that this hire and this coaching staff specifically is very legit and very respected. And I think that's going to be a huge factor in the season.
No question. I love the staff that he's put together. Everyone would love to have Myles Garrett on their football team. Bears with plenty of draft
Except
capital.
For you.
Oh, no, I would love to have Myles Garrett, but not at the expense of 2 first-round picks because I know they need so much help in other areas. You think they should mortgage whatever you need to mortgage on one player, Myles Garrett?
No, because I'm in favor of stockpiling as many offensive linemen as you can, and I think they will do that in free agency. I also think that they should do that in the first round of the draft because we've seen how many different combinations they've had to use over the years. And I know Ben Johnson said the offensive line play can change a lot with just making 1 or 2 changes, but I believe you look at what he was dealing with in Detroit and what he probably wants to do with Caleb Williams and the strengths of this offense once he has his pieces. And a lot of that will be predicated on a good offensive line. They're going to run the ball just like they did in Detroit. I think a running back is in play in the later rounds too. So I'm not in favor of them trading for Myles Garrett, but some national draft analysts does think that's in play for the Bears. All right, joined now by Trevor Sikkema. He is the lead draft analyst for PFF. And I was just reading one of your mock drafts that you made after the Super Bowl where you actually have the Bears trading out of 10 to Cleveland for Myles Garrett.
Yes. Look, I think that would be a huge move for them. Obviously, everybody wants Myles Garrett, but I do think the Chicago Bears are positioned well enough to actually make a really good offer for him, and he'd fit perfectly, right? They're sitting here saying, hey, okay, maybe we do like what Austin Booker develops into, but if they can get Myles Garrett opposite Montez Sweat, they're catapulting themselves into that winning window, hoping that Caleb Williams takes that next step with Ben Johnson. So not every team, for as much as everybody would love a Myles Garrett, not every team is poised or in the right spot of their winning window to be able to do it. To me, the Chicago Bears absolutely are. And so if they have the chance to, it would take their first-round pick this year. It would take their first-round pick next year. But the whole hope is that if you're trading for a guy like Myles Garrett, if Caleb Williams is taking that next step, your first-round pick next year, you're hoping it's around 25, 28, or best-case scenario, 32, right? And so you have to take that into account as well. And Myles Garrett is still in his prime. He's got a pretty team-friendly contract if you trade for him, and he's exactly what they would need. It also frees them up to take offensive line, to go another direction when it comes to either the draft or free agency, things like that. So I would love that move.
I think this is going to turn into a saga, though, because both Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have been at the Combine talking and saying that Myles Garrett is, quote, unmovable. So what happens over the next month is going to be very interesting. I'm with you, though. I wouldn't mortgage the future, although 14 sacks the past 2 seasons, 2-time back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year is very intriguing. I just think the Bears have so many needs on that offensive line.
Cassie, I'm not going to disagree with you. You cannot dispute this guy's production since he's been in the league. But I can tell you this. You're paying Montez Sweat $25 million a season. You're going to add Myles Garrett, and I get it. Friendly contract right now, 5 years, $125 million, $25 million a season. But he's not going to be happy unless you make a trade for him and restructure his contract and give him $40 million a season. You can't invest $65 million on 2 players playing the same position. That's another reason why I just don't think bringing Myles Garrett to Chicago is the right move for the Bears. We need to take a timeout. Coming up next, Cassie is going to be joined by our digital sports reporter, does a terrific job, Chris Kwasinski. Chris is a draft guru. He is a draft nerd. That's what he calls himself. He's going to give us his thoughts on the draft and who the Bears must target in the first round when we come back here on Fox 32's Scouting the Future.
Lou, what you doing?
Hey, Caitlin, I'm looking for this stream everyone's talking about.
Fox Local?
Yeah.
Get me. App Store, download Fox Local, open it, pick Chicago, boom.
Oh, that was easy. Hey, Paris. Hey, I got this stream on my phone finally.
I'm on there.
Everyone's on this thing.
Now you can watch Paris on Politics anytime, anywhere.
Hey, Anita, I'm on Fox Local.
I know, Lou. I watch you on Bears Blitz on Fox Local.
Fox Local. This is big stuff.
Glad I could help.
Welcome back, Naptown, wide awake. Look at that, sun is out downtown Indianapolis, home to the NFL Scouting Combine through the weekend, bustling with draft prospects who are gearing up to do drills in a little over an hour or so. Welcome back to our Fox 32 NFL Combine special called Scouting the Future. Thanks for joining us the last couple of days. I'm Lou Canellis. Let's go back live to Indianapolis. Cassie Carlson has been there since Tuesday, and she's joined by Chris Kwasinski, who writes terrific columns on Fox32Chicago.com. Cassie?
Thanks, Lou. First, the question to you is the easiest one. Do you call yourself a draft nerd?
I did last week when I was talking to Matt Miller. I like the nickname. I like the tabbing myself that, but I don't know if that's the case because there's a lot of really smart people that do this a lot better than I do.
It's fun. It's one of the most fun parts about being at the Combine is that you see all these different personalities coming from every different market, national writers as well. You've been talking to a lot of them. You've been out and about at the town, seeing the scene, which is kind of an event in itself. What are your biggest takeaways when it comes to what people are perceiving of the Bears and their ability to change this team in the offseason?
Honestly, I think it goes back to Tuesday. I think the biggest takeaway was that the Bears might not go offensive line in the first round. I think when you talk about Ryan Poles, the word they use, aggressive in free agency, coupled with what Ben Johnson said about let's find the best players that we can possibly find, I don't know if that means offensive line at number 10 overall. I think if you have a guy like, I know we were just talking about it, Abdul Carter, what happens with him with his foot now, but also Myles Williams is a guy that may be the number one edge rusher if it weren't for Abdul Carter. I know a couple years ago when he first burst onto the scene at Georgia, we were all talking about like this is a guy that's playing at a top 5 pick level as a freshman. But now being in the draft process, he's 260. He's extremely quick for a guy that size. If it weren't for Abdul Carter, he may be the number one edge rusher as well. So, I mean, that's a guy that also met with the Bears, also said that he wants to sack Aaron Rodgers. That's what he wants to do when he gets to the NFL. And I think that's something that we're going to look forward to, especially when the Bears are looking for someone at number 10.
All right, so I'm actually going to look at my phone because our producer, Roger, just got in my ear and said the Chiefs just franchise tagged Trey Smith. So there we go. That changes things a little bit. The number around $24 million. So there you go. Just when you think that you know the direction the Bears are going to go in free agency, things suddenly change. All right, so just react. What are your initial thoughts on that? You just said you don't think the Bears are going to go offensive lineman necessarily in the first round. Well, do you think that's maybe going to change?
Honestly, I think this makes it even more possible that they go with defensive linemen because when we heard Ben Johnson, he asked, can you rebuild the interior of this line? He pointed to the Carolina Panthers being like, hey, they did it last offseason as well. And the thing that they did, they signed Damian Lewis, Robert Hunt. They dedicated like $89 billion guaranteed to lock those two guys up. And we saw the return. They had like 62 sacks allowed in 2023 with Bryce Young in his rookie year. That went down to 35 in year 2. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about where all you have to do is sign a couple guys, and you can reshape the outlook of everything.
Lou, I want to hear your reaction to Trey Smith being franchise tagged by the Chiefs.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm shocked. I really didn't think they'd come up with the money to franchise tag Trey Smith at $23.4 million. And The report is from Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network that they're working on a long-term contract. But, hey, when you have the best offensive lineman in football, that's something you must do, even if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, who always seem to have just a load of riches there in Kansas City on offense and defense. Let me throw this at you, Chris, because Cassie and I in the first segment talked about Abdul Carter's foot fracture, and his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, says it's not going to affect his draft status. Let's say he's wrong. Let's just hypothetically say that he's wrong, and Jalen Carter, much like Jalen Carter, he starts to fall. And he falls to the Bears at 10. And before Trey Smith, this news came out on Smith, I was going to say, and let's say they struck out in their pursuit of free agents Trey Smith and also Atlanta Falcons center Drew Dahlman. At 10, are you taking Carter, or do you absolutely need the best offensive lineman on the board?
I'm taking Carter unequivocally. There's no doubt in my mind that you want this guy. When we talk about the likes of Myles Garrett, Khalil Mack, guys that went in the top 5 of their respective drafts, they turned out to be pretty great. Defensive Player of the Year winners. We're talking about surefire hits on these guys. And Lou, I don't know if you can pass on a guy that has that upside and that ceiling, especially in this draft where there's so many great prospects. Not only at edge rusher, but when you go to guard, when you go to the offensive line, the Bears could get a guy in the second round that could play right away. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State's a name that I keep thinking of and I keep hearing this week as a guy that played tackle for Ohio State in the national championship game because he had to go out because of injury purposes for Josh Simmons, but he's really a guard. That's a guy that we could target for the interior of the Bears offensive line and say that's a guy they could plug and play right away, is experienced at multiple positions. I don't think we have to marry ourselves to the idea that the offensive line has to go number 1 in the first round, especially if a guy like Abdul Carter falls to you. We're talking about a guy that played a lot his last year at Penn State only because he couldn't crack the lineup in his first couple years at Penn State. That's saying a lot, not just about Penn State, but also about what he was able to do in his final year as a Nittany Lion. Imagine if he had all 3 years to himself. Well, we're talking about one of the best defensive prospects we've ever seen.
Cassie, here's my worry.
I want to go back to the offensive. Oh, go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Cassie, here's my worry. I want to go back to the offensive line, and maybe you were going to say this. Listen, we saw a Bears team last year offensively that was pitiful because the kid being Caleb Williams, did not have time in the pocket to throw the football, to run an offense. He was sacked 68 times, number 1 overall pick. If you do not give him his best chance to succeed under a new head coach, who, by the way, is one of the great offensive coordinators in the game already, all right, we've said that. I just think you're burning off years on his rookie contract. I think you need to take care of this offense immediately, and that involves rebuilding the offensive line with high-quality offensive linemen, not guys that you're going to find in the second or third round or maybe get lucky in rounds 5, 6, or 7. Cassie.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. And I actually heard an interesting thing about Will Campbell, that if he were to fall, he has position flexibility to play tackle guard. He can even play center. And one thing that I learned about him is he was calling all the protections at left tackle at LSU. We know that Caleb Williams had to handle all of that at the line of scrimmage. So having someone that could take over that, alleviate some of that stress and the responsibility that a young quarterback, I don't know that he should be handling all of that at this point in his career. I think that could be a huge play for the Bears too. Didn't know that about Will Campbell, so I think that's pretty intriguing.
Before you leave me, Chris, real quickly, Tyler Warren, how good?
Bad. You could make an argument he was the best player in the Fiesta Bowl and the Orange Bowl and 2 college football playoff games. Look, I'm not saying that the Bears should pick him, but if they do, look, you could do a lot worse than one of the best players in this draft. Arguably the best player in the draft. He can catch, he can run block. He's that good.
Well, and then they'd have to go out and find a deal for Cole Kmet. Where can people find your work, Chris?
You can always find it, fox32.com/sports. It's all there, columns, coverage from the entire week and going forward.
Great work all week long. I've been reading your material. Thanks so much. We need to take a quick break. Coming up, Cassie had a chance to sit down with Fox Sports' Carmen Vitale about the Bears' offensive line. This should be interesting when we come back here on Bears Scouting the Future.
Nothing beats a Chicago sunrise. But with our busy lives, it's easy to miss. Good Day Chicago won't waste your time. We don't produce our news out of New York. We are live, local. All Chicago, all the time. Starting at 4:30. Watch or listen live, however you get ready to seize the day. Anytime, anywhere. On TV or Fox Local. Weekday mornings on Fox 32, Chicago.
Once I score a bucket, then I'm gonna look over there at the crowd and be like, yeah, shh, be quiet.
HBCU basketball is back, and this season,
Anybody can beat anybody if you come out and play.
will be legendary.
Nobody else touches us.
As tradition
hashtag big energy.
Y'all gonna see some.
and hustle
I'm a person that likes pressure.
crowns the next champion
We're just getting started here on the crossover.
on HBCU Go.
Saturday at 2 on Fox Chicago Plus.
Free agency. You hope that the Bears go after Trey Smith. Maybe they go after Drew Dahlman at center as well. How do you think they balance attacking both free agency and the draft when it comes to the offensive line?
I don't think there's any amount that's too much when it comes to this, because we talked about how Ben Johnson was asked about, can you overhaul, the entire interior offensive line in one offseason? You can, but you got to invest a lot in it. I do think, however, it's totally worth it because everything starts up there for the offense, and that's how Detroit kind of built their team. You see the evolution of that offensive line and how that then manifested itself in a phenomenal run game in protection for Jared Goff. Yes, Caleb Williams is more mobile than Jared Goff is. He can kind of create in the offensive backfield, but you don't want to rely on him to do that, because you saw what happened when he wasn't trusting his protection this year, and rightfully so.
We heard Ryan Poles say that he won.
Cassie Carlson rejoins me from Lucas Oil Stadium. Again, late breaking news. Chiefs are going to franchise tag Trey Smith. The interview that Cassie was doing with Carmen obviously took place earlier today before the late breaking news that just came forth, about 10, 15 minutes ago. Cassie, give me a wrap up. You've spent 3 days down in Indy. You've talked to a lot of reporters. Tell me the feel of where you think the Bears are headed in free agency now with Trey Smith off the board.
Now I think they better go after a veteran center, and then I think also Zeitler's another name from the Lions. He has a history with Ben Johnson. That might be someone that they go after. I think this changes a lot though for the Bears, and obviously Bears fans are very disappointed on Twitter. It's an interesting read out there, but overall a very mellow combine. Not many top quarterback prospects, so that definitely changes the vibe here.
Great work all week long. Next up for the Bears, free agency starts March 12th. Teams can start shopping on the 10th. Big time for the Bears, who will have plenty of room under the salary cap to go shopping, even if Trey Smith isn't available. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you here on your home of the Bears, Fox 32 Chicago.